And we're off. What's up, guys? Made a mistake last week. Made a mistake by just mailing it in on the title of the video. Can't do that. Need some clickbait. Need a little clickbait. Get people to watch. So, gave it this much more attention today. Optimal nutrition. So, it's kind of where we've been at for a couple weeks now. But we're like really into, I would say, the fine tuning stage of this. So, in one sense, it's like if you get this right, you are at a great place. But we can't get this right unless we have these other things that seem kind of simple, unless we get those right first. So we can't nail this without first, as a priority, nothing is more important than the quality of your food. Okay? Eat real food. It's our first nutritional tenet. And as we go down the line here, yes, it like the picture of, hey, what we think an optimal diet looks like starts to really take shape. But man, we kind of have a hierarchy here for a reason. And that's not to say that where we're at today and this week with this principle is the least important. However, it's like without what comes first, we can get our priorities jacked up and we can actually end up making decisions that are terrible for our health if we don't have first things first. So that being said, principle this week is the human body needs to eat food that is both plant and animal-based to get, I've been throwing this in here this week, optimal amounts of both macro and micronutrients in order to survive and thrive. So I've kind of got two ideas flowing here. So we're saying, hey, not vegans, not carnivores. We're saying optimum nutrition is an omnivorous diet. We're saying we need stuff from both of these kind of big categorical groups. We'll dig in here, and I think there's bad stuff on both sides, but I think there's more harm on one side than the other. But I digress. So the first thing I ask people is like, hey, have you ever like gone to one of the extremes here? And not very many people have. As loud as the plant-based dogma is, at least from my sample size of the people I talked to on Monday, only, I had one or two people who said, yep, I've done the full vegan thing. And I had one or two people that said, yep, I've tried the full carnivore thing. It's like, we actually don't think that optimal health is found in either of those two spots. Now, let's put the plant and animal thing to the side for a minute and focus a little bit more on this macro-micro thing. So first with the micronutrients. So I ask people, hey, do you even consider micronutrients when you're eating? And I think one of the best answers here was a fairly simplistic way of looking at it. And I think this is good. So if last week we talked about macronutrients, okay, and if we stop there, again, this hierarchy matters. If we stop there and say, okay, we need X amount of carbohydrates in the day, and we don't consider anything else about the food, okay, well, really, and this kind of gets back to principle number one, eat real food. If we don't consider that, and after it, we don't consider anything involving micronutrients, you would be able to say, hey, I can get all of my carbohydrates through some high fructose corn syrup. right? Why not? Why not? It gets me to, I'm measuring this out. It gets me to the amount of carbohydrate I need for the activity I'm doing, and bada bing, bada boom. We're all set, right? But when we consider, okay, we're not going to consider that a real food to begin with. And now when we consider, hey, I can get the same amount of carbohydrate in a wildly different form, okay? Let's just sub out, let's just take 100 grams of carbohydrate. I don't know what that is in some high fructose corn syrup, but we're talking a small amount of liquid, right, to get you to that amount. Enough, you could probably shoot it back, bottoms up, no problem. Then we just look at 100 grams of carbohydrate in an apple. I would say your average size apple, rough math here, that's going to be at least 3 apples. Okay? So right there, think about behaviorally what it takes to go bottoms up on a little cup of liquid versus what it takes to put down 3 apples. Okay? Now, we haven't even gotten to the principle yet. This is just behavior, right? You're gonna consume this so much quicker and easier than you're gonna consume these apples over here. And these apples are not just apples. There's a lot more going on as far as micronutrition goes in these apples versus this just straight sugar and highly refined sugar over on this other side. Plus, we've got stuff like fiber going on here, right? Like the things that compound when we start to eat real foods is, it's astronomical. Okay, so that's like the easiest thing. If you're thinking, hey, I can drink a soda versus I could eat some fruit to get adequate levels of carbohydrate, the biggest difference there is actually not in the macronutrients. It's in, hey, what else is happening here? The micronutrients, and as I mentioned, hey, there's some behavioral differences drastically changing there. Also, something, this is an interesting question, okay? The question is, have you ever experienced a micronutrient deficiency? And maybe off the top of your head, you'd say, Flip, I don't know. I don't think so, okay? But if I started asking you questions like, hey, do you ever experience cramping from a hard workout? Do you ever experience seasonal affective disorder? You get kind of sad later in the winter. Days are short and dark, right? These are just 2 really simple examples of pretty common things that oftentimes, I'm not going to say all the time, but oftentimes have their root cause wrapped up in a micronutrient deficiency. Hey, the seasonal affective disorder, one of the biggest contributors there is just low levels of vitamin D, right? You've not been outside. You've not had the sun hitting your skin, and that has massive implications on your overall health. The cramping, right, could be something as simple as a lack of hydration and proper electrolyte balance. Okay, so this is where we start to see a lot of this, or lots of people talk about like iron deficiency, right? Tons of different things that are super common do come back to a micronutrient deficiency and not getting what we need from the food that we're eating. Now, I would say that ideally, we are getting everything we need from whole food sources and from our food. Now, that's not to say that like supplementation with some of this stuff might not be important. I would say for Midwesterners and north of here, right, throughout the winter months, it's a really, really good idea to supplement with some vitamin D through these months, these winter months, to be able to fend off the fact that, yeah, we really don't get out in the sun very much. Now, right now, I should probably be out there instead of sitting here in front of this camera, but here's where we are. Maybe when I'm done here. Then, the question I'm posing tomorrow is flipping that around. Well, not flipping it around, asking the exact same question, but with macro macronutrients, right? Have you ever experienced a macronutrient deficiency? Now, this honestly is common with all three. So again, macronutrients, we've got protein, fat, carbohydrate. Hey, have you struggled to build muscle? Could be a protein deficiency. Hey, have you ever what they call bonk? Have you ever bonked in the middle of a workout? You kind of get to a certain spot and you're like completely zapped of energy. Hey, that might actually be a carbohydrate deficiency, right? Even things like when you're eating a low to no carb diet, and I've experienced people getting like strange like heart palpitations, not being able to sleep well, right? And it has come back to a lack of adequate amounts of carbohydrate in the diet. Or there are a lot of issues with just improper hormone imbalance that come back to a lack of essential fat in the diet. And so there are tons of issues, and again, common things that can come back to if we are not getting appropriate amounts of these nutrients, both the finer-tuned micronutrients, but as well as some of the just big picture macronutrient stuff. So eat real food, go down the chain here, don't eat all the time. High fat, moderate protein, low carb, and hey, plants and animals are both important, and we need them for both micro and macronutrients. Now, here's the interesting one. You might think that, a plant-based diet that is pretty limited on the macronutrients of fat and protein. Like the plants are, the dominant macronutrient there is carbohydrate. And you would be correct. But then on the other side of that, you might say, and you need the plants for the micronutrients. Well, actually, I would say if we look at only the animal foods, now, granted, this would assume that we're eating nose to tail animal foods, right? You don't just eat boneless, skinless chicken breasts, but you eat a variety of cuts. You eat meat off of the bone, and you eat organ meats, right? If we do those things, really the only thing that's missing from that diet is carbohydrate, right? You can get the nutrition you need, and actually higher amounts of it and more bioavailable forms of it through animal foods. And the most important thing we can get from the plant foods is the carbohydrate. Food for thought there. So can you get some of the micronutrients and stuff from plant foods? Absolutely. Okay. Lots of different stuff going on there. But I would say as a whole, the more of those nutrients we could be getting from animal sources, the more impact they're going to have, because it's more like in kind. Your body has to do more work to take plant foods, digest them, and convert them into the actual usable forms of these vitamins and micronutrients for your body to put to work, right? So if you didn't know that, come on, man, get some ribs, right? Eating meat off the bone with some, taking in some of that connective tissue, gnawing right down to the hard bone. Man, get yourself some liver, heart. Those are probably the two best organ meats, most nutrient dense foods truly on the planet. Heck, like bone marrow, that is some of the most delicious stuff. You roast that up with some salt, like that is a treat right there. These things are packed full of nutrients, right? All right. we're moving on. This week with our exercising, we got back into kind of some regular old lifting, right? We've been testing out these lifts, maxing out for 4 weeks, and now we are back to kind of a normal rhythm. So we're going to spend the next 8 weeks on some of these movements that we started this week. So we did some front squatting on Monday. Tomorrow, doing some strict barbell overhead pressing, and we're basing those lifts off of a percentage of the tested 1 rep max lift. So as long as you did that, you should have a decent number to be working off of with these. But one of the other things that we do often, and that I'm honestly going to be throwing in most days of the week, is taking basically last set to failure. Right. So here's the intent of taking the last set to failure. That point of working to failure, working to true muscular fatigue, that is like more important than the load and the rep scheme and possibly even the volume, is that we get our body to that physiological state of challenge. Okay. And so testing a 1 rep max is there's a decent amount of skill involved in that. And the heavier the weight gets, the more there's like a skilled component of being able to actually do that well and quite honestly accurately, right? If we just had a machine that was testing the amount of pressure you could push onto it or whatever, like we might come up with different numbers than what you're actually able to do with a barbell on your back or whatever. So because of that, I like to throw in those sets to failure because it kind of levels the playing field. You could be off on your percentage a decent amount, but if you actually take yourself right up to the edge on that last set, you're going to get 90% of the same benefit as if you had, good, hard working sets the whole way through. I find that it makes it easier for the less experienced lifter to get that same kind of benefit and kind of find that spot, find that what that feeling really is, get more familiar with that feeling. And so it's just a tool that we can use to find that and get more familiar with that. Then rolled it back to 2018 with today's workout, open workout 18.1. I remember very vividly the first time doing this with Dr. Alex, another buddy of ours, and story time here. I think that was the first time I had really used a dumbbell in this way. So we had some single arm dumbbell hang clean and jerks. And there was a period of time where I would say, so I started doing this stuff in 2013, and so 13 to 18, we really didn't use a lot of dumbbells really at all. And so I could be wrong here, but I believe this was a year where they kind of said, hey, don't forget about the dumbbells. The regional events that year, I believe it was this year, were entirely loaded with dumbbells. It was either 17 or 18, 16, 17, one of those years. Anyway, and so they kind of, said, hey, don't forget about this tool. Well, I don't know that I had forgotten about the tool, but I just hadn't really used that tool in my journey at that point. And so I was really timid with that weight, just not comfortable throwing that weight around. It's like I'm definitely stronger than I was in 2018, but honestly, like not to the degree that is different between how I can move a 50-pound dumbbell then versus now, right? So this kind of goes back to some of that skill stuff it really wasn't the fact that I wasn't strong enough to move a 50-pound dumbbell. There was a skill component where it's like, man, I'm not confident throwing this thing around, right? Versus today, me approaching this workout, I'm looking at this and it's like, nothing's holding me back here, right? So what that means is this is more about kind of managing my pace, right? Trying to push the pace as high as I can while still being able to maintain fast transitions, while not screwing up any of the reps. And really like pushing that versus needing to manage the movement pattern or the load or anything like that, right? So this was a fun one to pull back up. Won't talk about my score compared to Alex's. That's all for this week. Next week, what do we got? What do we got going on? So we did some heavy squatting and some heavy pressing we're doing tomorrow. So that means next week we're going to be doing some heavy pulling from the floor. Okay, so we're going to be doing some deadlifting, but then, and here's a new thing for us. We don't often do a lot of work on the Olympic lifts, right? What I have found is that most of the time, people's lowest hanging fruit is, hey, most people need to get stronger, and that would kind of rise the tide on a lot of things. Getting stronger, and then getting better in kind of the deep corners of a lot of these movement patterns, right? So twice a week, we're intentionally going super heavy. Twice a week, we're intentionally going after, end range in lots of different positions, like taking every joint as far as we can take it. And building out all of those deep, dark corners of the knees and ankles and hips and shoulders and elbows and wrists and all of it, okay? And so this is a little bit of a tweak from that normally, but back to this skill conversation. These Olympic lifts are a phenomenal tool for both strength and speed, as well as accuracy and balance and flexibility. Like they're a really great tool, but they have a really high barrier to entry. They've got a really high skill prerequisite. So this is just a small shift that I'm making in our program. Is just like, hey, we need some more just regular time, being able to work on technique with these lifts. So with kind of our main 4 strength working days, I don't know if it'll always be one of our heavy days versus like it might end up being on one of the more accessory type of days and mixing in with some other stuff. But I won't say most weeks, I would say at least every other week, getting in some more just technical practice on the Olympic lifts. So starting point here, it's the most challenging of every movement we do, the snatch, right? So we're going to be doing some work with the snatch starting next week, and it's going to be great, right? So like I said, deadlift, snatch. What's our workout? Yeah, kind of a boring, some of these open workouts that we're doing, it's just like, hey, super manageable, right? Accessible to lots of people, and just go after it, right? Really work capacity types of tests. So, more of that to look forward to next week. newcity.fitness/store. If you want a sick hoodie like me, I'm wearing a light gray. Look at me go, man. Changing shirts. I'm super conscious of what I wear on Thursdays now because I had worn the same thing multiple weeks in a row. Even though I have like that sweatshirt, my favorite one, the black one with the white on the corner, like I have 2 of those, right? And who says laundry can't be done in the middle of the week, right? So I wear that one all the time. But with your eyes on me, man, I gotta mix it up. But if you want one of these, newcity.finish/store. If you're not a member here, but you'd like to be, hit me up. Go to the website, newcity.finish/start. If you get the emails, there's always a link in there to schedule an appointment, come in, chat, and do some great things. Alex and I are working on a new little, I don't want to call it an event, a little program we're working on, specifically for some gentlemen. So if you're a gentleman and you need a little work, becoming a little more manly, masculine things, I'll let your mind wander there. We got something coming for you. So stay tuned for that. Okay, that's all. Have a great week. Go Chiefs. I really don't care who wins, but go Chiefs, and we'll see you.